What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, and we are ready to unload a notebook full of observations from OTA number 5, week 2, second one open to the media. I know it's OTA number 5 because Dan Quinn told us so before practice. They got into a number of things today, including our first look at the new kickoff return. They rotated a ton of guys through. But the most important thing that happened at OTAs today was Jayden Daniels performed exceptionally well. The rookie quarterback, the number 2 overall pick. Number 1, I think this is always something to monitor in terms of quarterback development, in terms of who they're prioritizing. Seemed to get the most reps at the position. It also seemed like they gave Mike Sainer still a number of reps, maybe a couple of extras. You slide him a few extras in the rotation, and some of their other young guys. Certainly their draft picks, like these are guys they're trying to develop, and they are giving them the requisite reps to do so. But specifically with Jayden Daniels, he still went second in every drill, so he theoretically is QB2 on the depth chart. However, he got more reps in a lot of those drills than Marcus Mariota. And we saw true teamwork where it's one ball, everyone on the sidelines, you're moving the ball. It's still 7-on-7. There's no offensive or defensive line. But 2-minute situation and a little bit of red zone type of stuff where it's one unit at a time, and Jaden seemed to be getting some extra reps. That in itself is noteworthy. Again, it's May. There's only so much that you can put on any of these notes that we're going to give here. But it's what he did with them that I think is truly the interesting long-term discussion. And I struggle with this conversation because, again, I cannot stress this enough. It's May 22nd. There's nothing definitive or declarative, and everything I'm about to say could change with a really bad practice next week, and a bad mandatory minicamp situation in a couple of weeks, and a rough training camp, and whatever else. There's no guarantees for anything that you can do in May. But here's the catchy headline. From what I've seen so far, I'd be kind of surprised if Jayden Daniels isn't starting this season. Because from what I've seen so far, I've seen a quarterback in Daniels who seems to process things very quickly, who has exceptional touch on the football, who is showing an advanced understanding of some of the route concepts. I actually got the chance to watch practice with Logan for quite a bit today. And we'll obviously have a lot more on what Logan thought in Take Command, which we're going to record all our observations, or we're going to record tomorrow, I should say. So stay tuned, obviously, for that. We'll play some of that here on the radio, but if you're not subscribed to Take Command, now's a good time. But in talking with Logan and, like, also relying on his years of experience and expertise, like, there's a couple throws that Jaden makes. He's like, oh, that's really nice. And, like, I can tell it's nice, but if Logan's saying it's nice, there's probably an added layer of the concept and understanding. That was his third read. And, like, you know, it's the kind of thing that's easier to see if you're, even an intelligent analyst on tape. But if you're someone like Logan, who's just football brain, works at a different speed, you can see all that stuff live from the sideline. I mean, he watched a lot of practices from the sideline as a player. In between, that's not a shot at Logan being a third stringer most of his career, just the nature of football practices. You're out there, you rest, you're out there, you rest, you're out there, you rest. And so he's used to seeing things from that angle. Point is, he showed some ability to make really great reads. Sometimes he's just quickly identifying its man coverage. He's picking his matchup, and sometimes that worked and sometimes that didn't. But his eyes are in the right place. There's other times where he's able to manipulate zone defenders. The play of the day today, in my book, is this absolute dot he drops on Jahan Dotson down the sideline, where he realizes he's got one-on-one coverage, but there is a safety over the top, so you can't just like loft it out there, and it's got to be on the sideline. He's got to beat a corner who's in really excellent trail coverage, and it's Michael Davis, the Chargers signee, who's, God, that's a big dude. Big, long, and he's right in Jahan's hip pocket. And Jahan's got a half a step, which is NFL open, and Jayden Daniels just could not have put the ball in a better spot. This happened 7 feet in front of me. I could not have, there's that Will Smith movie where he had like the remote to control life. I could not have had the Will Smith remote, paused life, walked up to Jahan Dotson and put a football in his hand any better than Jayden Daniels dropped this ball in the bucket. It was also a really nice play from Jahan, who showed, it's not even, I said to Logan, it's not even late hands, it's late hand, because he kind of bread baskets it over, looks it in, and just doesn't move his hands. It's a bread basket kind of catch over his shoulder, except for he just uses his outside hand on the sideline, or his inside hand, and is able to get both feet down, secure the ball, and step out of bounds. It cannot be more perfect. But it's not just the precision and the accuracy of the throw that's impressive. And don't get me wrong, that was insanely impressive. To me, the thing that stood out and why I'm willing to say now on May 22nd, despite all my hesitancy and every fiber of my being that says, Craig, don't do this. Don't say this thing. It's going to catch a headline. It's way too early. The reason I think that it's worth putting out into the universe now, that I would guess, I'm not even going to say I don't foresee a circumstance where, that's too strong because it's May. I'm going to force myself to show that restraint. But right now, why it's very easy to see why Jayden Daniels is going to start this season is he has very fast eyes, which is something that Dan Orlovsky told us pre-draft that he thought was a huge separator for Daniels and why he liked him so much. You see those quick eyes. You see how fast he processes it. He's not even running yet. And that ability compared to where Marcus Mariota is, I would say so far Jaden's been the better quarterback. And I just don't, again, I'm trying not to say I don't foresee a world, but if they're close, why wouldn't you start Daniels? And I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to get to here is it seems like they're going to the very least be close. And if they're not close, it seems like Daniels is going to be ahead. And if it's remotely close, you should start Daniels anyway. And that, to me, through 2 weeks of practice, seems like with Mariota throwing a bunch of picks last week and there's some balls in the dirt, the timing is not as crisp. And Daniels is the opposite today. He did throw a couple of picks in a red zone drill, but I also kind of think that if it was a real red zone drill, maybe he runs some of those. There's different things. Sometimes it's on the receivers. There's a lot going on, which is to say that for Mariota, maybe some of this is on receivers, whatever. But they're also running out there with similar receivers. Like Terry and Jahan and Diami and Zacchaeus and all the top guys ran some with Mariota, but they also ran some with Daniels. They did a good job of mixing and matching today. And so with that, I would say that we need to just prepare ourselves for a fun, a fun summer where I think Jayden Daniels could wind up being QB1. When we get back, more from OTAs here on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Sorry, not sure what happened there for the radio audience. The audio internet goblins got us somehow. Anthony, where did I feel like you were frantically waving at me very late in that segment, so I don't think that everybody missed much.
Nah, they didn't miss much. I definitely did have to get on the air and say we're trying to figure out what's going on. We're having some technical difficulties.
Yeah. So the point is, which I think most people again got, is that it seems like at the very least the way he's playing right now, and by the way, the way Marcus Mariota is playing through a couple of practices here, that they're going to be very, very close. And if they're very, very close, I don't see why you wouldn't just start Jayden Daniels. That's the 8-second version of the segment. So I don't know what people want to do with that information. Probably freak out. Probably be like, Craig's out there and he said Jayden Daniels is the starter. Now I feel the tug. I feel the tug of responsibility, Anthony. So let's level set some things here. But I think that's also only fair. One, he hasn't had to touch protections yet, which, as we learned last year, is really important, right? Not that I think this is not things that I think Jayden Daniels is going to struggle with. This is not a Jayden Daniels hit list. This is just a contextualizing what we've seen so far, right? So 7-on-7 route concepts, day 1, day 2 install, whatever day they're on. So far, so good. They've had clean operations. He seemed to know where he's supposed to go. His eyes are moving quickly. Ball gets out of his hand quickly. All that stuff is great. Hasn't had to touch a lick of protection yet. By the same token, that means he hasn't faced any real pressure yet. So that's the biggest thing, right? Is he's been really good at NFL 7-on-7. He hasn't had to deal necessarily like intensity-wise with time score situation yet, even down in distance. It's just kind of like, hey, we're running a play. Okay, ball goes back to the same spot. We line up again. We're running a play. Ball goes back to the same spot again. We're running a play. Okay, that was your 3 reps. Now let's rotate Jeff Driscoll in here or Sam Hartman in here, right? Like, he hasn't had to deal with the realities of a game. Never, even preseason. He did 2-minute today, and that's the closest that he's gotten to anything that resembles football. And still, no protections, no pressure. So to say, like, Jayden Daniels should be the starter when the sample size is this small is not fair. They shouldn't have made up their mind yet, which I don't think that they have. They're just giving the veteran guy the first rep of the drill because that's kind of what you do. But at the same time, I think what you're seeing is a veteran of Marcus Mariota not execute as well as a rookie in Jayden Daniels. And I think the difference between, like, maybe this year or last year even, just to use the example that's fresh for everybody, is like last year Jacoby Brissett was pretty on par with Sam Howell. Maybe Sam in this part of the year was a little bit better, but Jacoby was not playing with Terry, and he was also playing against twos. Like today, one of the things I like about what they did is the quarterback would stay and they would rotate everybody else. And so Marcus would go through a set of plays, and he'd have Terry and Jahan and Diami and Zacchaeus and Luke McCaffrey and top guys. Then he'd have a play where he's throwing to Bryson Tremaine, and he's throwing to Mitchell Tinsley, and he's throwing to the next group. And he'd be going against Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. Then he'd be going against Jamin Davis and whoever's out there playing with Jamin Davis. And then Jaden would come back in, and so would the ones of receivers and tight ends and linebackers and corners. And so you're getting to see, as they start the evaluation process, even though it's very early, and I actually asked Quinn directly about this today, and Anthony, I don't know if we have that answer ready to play. They're not even doing that much evaluating, but to the extent that they are, they're at least looking like for like. They're probably looking at similar plays, run with and against similar personnel. And on that barometer, even though it's only, a couple of tests here, Jayden Daniels, I think, has a better grade than Marcus Mariota. So, again, I don't know what people want to do with that information, but that's the information. Do we have the Quinn thing?
We have both. We have one on Jayden Daniels and how he's progressing, and then the other on how much he's prioritizing building chemistry versus
yeah, we can. I think that's relevant to this conversation. So I intentionally wanted to ask this to Quinn because of a lot of discussion around Emmanuel Forbes this week, where people saw him line up with the twos and they're like, oh my God, is he gonna start? He was a first-round pick last year. Well, guess what? Emmanuel Forbes was out there with the ones today, and guess what? Next week he might not be. Last week it was Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis. Today it was it was Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St-Juste. Next week, maybe it's Forbes and Davis. They're rotating those guys around. So I asked Quinn, is that something to read into? Are you guys worried about the depth chart? Or is this the kind of thing that, hey, it is what it is. We're just trying to get guys to learn stuff, and we're trying to get everybody equal reps. Here was Quinn's answer.
If you look, big picture-wise, there's certain parts of our identity that we'll be able to hit now. The speed, the execution, the finishing plays downfield, the defense, the way they break, the way they run to the ball, that's an identity part we're putting together, and I'm seeing, signs of that moving forward. The things that we don't get to see right now are the physical parts of it. That's not what this time is for. So what areas and knowing what to compete at that time. So in this time, it's competing, man, can I learn these details, and can I really go execute really quickly, communication. So not as much of the evaluation, it is the learning to go, but I do want to see that speed and see the guys communicate and the chemistry that goes. But as far as the depth chart is, not really right now. That's not part of it. We want to get as many guys, as much reps as we can, and then as we get into camp, then we'll be able to start building that as we go, which would include the preseason games.
And I think that's the right way to go about it. Because the other thing, Anthony, and this is, I guess, less applicable to Jayden Daniels, but certainly applicable to a guy like Forbes. He's earned his way back into the starting lineup. They're not playing with any physicality yet. There's an intentionality. And there was a great moment today in practice that I think kind of sums up who Dan Quinn is as a coach and some of the things that they're trying to establish. So they run 2-minute, like I mentioned, and they obviously have a sense of urgency in 2-minute because it's 2-minute. Everything you do needs to be right now. And at one point, I actually didn't see this happen, but I saw the aftermath in the conversation. Bryson Tremaine, second-year receiver out of Stanford, who I think actually has had a very, very good spring. So sorry, Bryson, to highlight this moment where you are going to need to improve. But he did not get lined up fast enough for Dan Quinn's liking. I guess kind of jogged to the line, not lollygag, but took his time getting set. And Dan is like, hey, man, it's 2-minute. We got to go. I need you to get on the ball, get set, and let us go because we're going to pick up a penalty. We're not going to get out. That's not good enough. And I think that is the kind of stuff you're looking for this type of year is, one, do you know your assignment and alignment? 2, do you play with the intensity and the speed that is now going to define who the Commanders are from a play style standpoint? And then when you get pads on in the fall, we're going to find out who's going to play or not because, if you have good technique and play with speed and intentionality and all that stuff all spring long and you get out there and you get absolutely bodied by the guy across from you on a consistent basis, well, I got bad news for you. This is the NFL, and that's going to happen. It is the Mike Tyson classic. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And so I think that when you look at the Commanders' depth chart now, and whether it's Jayden Daniels getting extra reps or Emmanuel Forbes today being with the ones, Quan Martin starting in the post at safety, Dominique Hampton occasionally working in with the ones as a kind of a dime linebacker, star, Buffalo nickel, whatever that role is. There's a lot of player mixing and matching here that I think does have potential legs. They're not going to do something that has no shot of happening. That's a waste of time. They're not going to take the 89th guy on the roster and be like, hey, let's throw him out there with the starters to see what happens. They know who those guys are. But at the same time, they're also not locking anything into stone right now, because much like the whole Jayden Daniels discussion pre-draft, as Adam Peters said, in the days right before, we didn't make a decision until we had to. And that's just good management. It leaves open the possibilities of what can be. And I like the way they're approaching this. It seems very smart. I think they've gotten a ton of reps for guys. They're clearly learning. I think they've paced it very well where you're not having a million mental mistakes. Practices are clean. They're intentional. They're efficient. And ultimately, we'll see what kind of results they get out of this, starting in training camp even, but certainly once we get in to the regular season. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, let us switch gears quickly to the NBA playoffs. We'll do much more on OTAs coming up at 5 o'clock. The one, the only, JP Finley will join us. Got a chance to watch a good bit of practice with him today, and we figured we'd bring our conversation to the radio. So JP Finley coming up at 5. We're going to detour off of the Commanders today for the NBA playoffs next, and at 5:30, our pal Justin Williams from The Athletic co-authored a story with Nicole Auerbach on a $3 billion lawsuit that is going to change the landscape of college sports. And then our Pick 6 at 6 coming a little bit later in the show as well. That all still to come here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show, and those little leprechauns got away with one last night. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And Anthony, if I told you all you had to do to win Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals on the road was inbound the basketball, I feel like as an NBA player, you probably like your chances, yeah?
I would love them, actually. I wouldn't just like them. I would love them.
I would also love my chances. And yet, the Indiana Pacers are down 0-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was a bizarre game in every single way. You had some guys step up. Drew Holiday, season high in points, not just for the playoffs, but apparently the 26 he had in regular season. I think he might actually went up with 28. Did he hit two free throws
28.
late?
Yep.
Yeah. So 28, but even the 26 would have been a season high for him. This is a dude who has scored 50 before. He just has not had that role in Boston. It's wild to watch their offense. I know this is how they operate because Derek White is exceptional at what he does, but late in games, even though you have Jason Tatum, Jason Tatum doesn't have the basketball. He's a screener, and then they try to get him shots. But in the last 5 minutes of the game, Tatum is a complete zero, total non-factor. And this is the kind of stuff that makes you not really trust the Boston Celtics, even though they won 60 games or whatever it was. They won a ton. They win 67, I think. 67 games this season. They were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference by a mile. And all of that is great, but at the end of the day, it's just how are we supposed to trust this team that consistently plays to the level of their opponents and then somehow pulls out a miracle in the end, which yesterday relied on some level of ineptitude from the Indiana Pacers, not just the inbounds, but I know it's risky, but when you have Jaylen Brown in the corner, right? So they're Indiana's up 3. All they have to do is inbound the ball. They can't. Siakam, they don't really have anybody run towards the inbounder. They have Siakam kind of running backwards. As Neesmith, I think, goes to inbound it, and good play by Brown to contest the pass, goes out off Siakam. Carlisle's already used his challenge earlier on a terrible challenge, and so you don't even have a shot to look at it again. And then, like he has done all playoffs long, and I am such a Rick Carlisle fan. I covered him in Dallas. He's so brilliant as a basketball coach. But Ant, you're up 3. The only thing that can hurt you is a 3. How do you not foul in those situations? I just don't get how NBA coaches haven't figured out that is the play. And I understand it's easier to do off the dribble, right? Especially you try to catch someone on a down dribble. That way, because you catch them on the up dribble, they can go into their shooting motion. You risk a 3-point foul. God forbid the worst thing happens and they somehow fight through your contact and they make it and get fouled. I understand there's a level of risk there. But Jaylen Brown's in the corner stuck. He can't dribble. He's trying to up fake you into trying to just get off a 3. Just foul him on the catch. And I know it's easier to second guess now because the Pacers lost the game, but just foul him on the catch and make him hit free throws and then trust that you're going to be able to. Now, maybe Rick Carlisle in the back of his head is you also, the one thing you need to do to be able to hit free throws is get the ball inbounded successfully and get fouled. And we couldn't even do the first part right. So why would I trust the second? Let's make him hit a miracle 3 here. But between that and the inbound situation and some other rough plays from them down the stretch and in overtime, it took Indiana looking like the 6th seed in the junior varsity conference for the Celtics to be up 1-0 at home. And that's not exactly awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I think on the closeout by Siakam, though, on Jaylen Brown, he was a little behind, so I think he just didn't want to risk, running into him and then hitting him while he's actually in the act of shooting. But my thing is, he should have at least had his hand up. He had both his hands down. Just put him straight up.
You get there late. Yes, exactly. I am a tall human. Shoot over me. Become the company's called Skills. They have the shot like the dummies that have the hands up that you use. Yeah, just become one of those. Become a dummy. That would have been better than what they did. And yet in overtime, like Tatum kind of comes back alive, makes a couple of plays. But I just, you watch even what, and this was in a loss, but like you watch Jokic in the last series, and he's got just given it everything. And you watch obviously Anthony Edwards, you watch Luka, like you watch the stars, and Tatum's done this. Like Tatum's a guy who's had 50 points in elimination games. Like he's that good. He's a star. I just kind of wonder, is this on us as watchers to adjust, realizing that Boston is more balanced than we're used to for a team that's this good? Or is it on Boston to be like, okay, in order to be the best version of ourselves in the playoffs, we need to emphasize the best parts of us and not be so democratic, if you will, not so equal-parted, and let our offense needs to go a little bit more through Jason Tatum, and as much as we love Derek White, less through Derek White. And that's the kind of thing that I just kind of wonder with how this Boston team is, because this is how they've been all playoffs long. And, I guess they gentleman sweep in the last series, but at the same time, nothing's felt easy or as dominant as their records and their regular season statistics suggest that this should be.
Yeah, I think it's more on the Celtics, to be honest. I think if you look back at, what the Miami Heat did when LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh were all together, and they were dominating the East. They were winning 60-plus games season in, season out. And what they were doing in the playoffs, their first two rounds, there were no contests until, they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they had, some stiffer competition. But even in those series, I think the Heat just did a good job of, putting those teams away. Especially at home. This is the first game at home. You've had a lot of days of rest. You got out to a great start to the game. You had a 13-point lead. At a point, you got to bury this team. And they also, a thing that, a lot of people really haven't, talked about was the free throw disparity. The Celtics shot so many more free throws compared to the Pacers.
Until who was it got fouled on a Nembhard, I think, got fouled on a three-pointer late in.
Oh, Halliburton.
Oh no, that's right. It was Reese. Yeah. It was Tyrese Halliburton, and that was in overtime, or was
overtime?
That? Yeah,
that was overtime.
Those were the 4th, 5th, 6th free throws of the game.
Exactly.
For Indiana, who wound up shooting just 10 on the day total. The Celtics went to the line 30 times.
So they had that at their advantage as well. It's more so you got to put these teams away. You got to put, this is how you prolong series and, games end up piling up. This is the game the Pacers should have won. Halliburton turnover, I don't know if he saw a ghost. I don't know if there was something on the wood. I'm not sure what happened at that point in the game, but the Pacers literally, I think both teams gave the game away. The Celtics gave it away. Being up, and then the Pacers had the game, and they literally gave it away. So I think this game is going to come back to really hurt the Pacers in the end, just because it's hard to win in Boston. It's hard.
Tatum ultimately, his final numbers look fantastic, and it's kind of one of the things where you got to watch it to be like, wait, what's your complaint with Tatum? He took 26 shots, which is a pretty solid number. He has 36 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and ultimately, the first 40-plus minutes, 40-ish minutes of the game, he was fantastic. And in overtime, he got going a little bit, and that was really essential. And credit to him for closing it out ultimately. But the final 5 minutes of regulation, he was completely a non-factor. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, on the other side, and this is the other thing that I'm definitely curious about, and you see the adjustments moving forward, Pascal Siakam owned those 5 minutes. You and I were texting a little bit about how they were just going at Al Horford. Now, that math changes the second Kristaps Porzingis comes back, obviously. But Siakam, 24 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and kind of owns that free throw line area. This is the kind of thing also where there's a lot to like about Joe Mazzulla, But I feel like we've come out of the last 2 playoffs with like real questions. He's a young coach. He's going to learn. He's going to get better. And I think this is the question you have to ask if you're Brad Stevens running that front office and the ownership group is, if we have a team that's ready to win right now, are we willing to have the patience to reap the rewards of everything that Joe Mazzulla learns? Or do we need someone that's better right now? Like, it's one thing if you're good now and will continue to grow. Like, Sean McVay is a better coach now than he was when he won the Super Bowl, but he was ready to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, even the first time he went, like, he's a better coach now than he was the first time he went to the Super Bowl, but he went to the Super Bowl as a second-year head coach with Jared Goff as his quarterback, and not even the current version of Jared Goff. You can be young and ready and good, but I think that there are clearly questions about how quickly Mazzulla can adapt in these situations. That if Pascal Siakam's murdering you from the free throw line because Al Horford's on him, and you've got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday on the floor, like, you got to figure out another solution there to not let Pascal Siakam be squared up one-on-one 19 feet away against Al Horford. And have it damn near cost you the basketball game at home in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, to be honest, Al Horford, it didn't matter who he was checking. Like, that was the mismatch. Nembhard, he got him late in the game a couple of times, free throw line, Jason shot. Siakam had his way in the pick and roll. Tyrese was able to get downhill. I said it, Craig. Hey, look, they're going to go at Al Horford until Kristaps comes out. I don't know who they turn to. Maybe Sam Hauser comes off the bench. I don't know if Luke Cornett is the guy you turn to. But
Cornett was at least a +2 last night. How about Peyton Pritchard? -15 in 23 minutes. Their depth is not good right now. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Is like, you should get to the finals if you're the Celtics much fresher than the team in the West.
Yep.
But you're putting yourself through some wars where. And this is the thing, you close out that game in the early fourth quarter, Tatum doesn't play 46 minutes. Holiday doesn't play 48 minutes. It's game 1. And not that, and actually now looking at Indiana, like, they've got the depth. Their highest was Siakam, who played 42. Tatum played 46. White played 42. Holiday played 48. Brown played 44. Longer the series goes.
Is not
Although
on their side.
I will say, what's the latest on Porzingis? Porzingis still listed as out. Xavier Tillman listed as day-to-day. Won't play in Thursday's game 2, but could return as soon as game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals, according to Woj, for Porzingis. We'll see.
Got some tough sledding, man. And it's hard to win in Indiana also. Like, we forget about that. I think Austin Rivers said this morning, they haven't lost a home game since March 18th.
That's crazy.
That's insane. That's 2 months.
That's crazy. It is May 22nd.
Yes.
All right, JP Finley is going to join us coming up at 5 o'clock. Coming up next, though, a story time from OTAs today that just made me feel like I'm having Groundhog Day. I'll explain next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Be joined by JP Finley in 10 minutes, talking Commanders OTAs Week 2, OTA 5. Really liked what I saw from Jayden Daniels today. We'll see what JP thinks coming up at 5 p.m. Right now, though, Anthony, something that is a yearly tradition, and it's a tradition that's incredibly stupid. So every year since I was on the beat, so I'll even rewind. Okay, first year that I covered training camp, 2016, I think, I quickly realized after one day outside in the Richmond heat that wearing short sleeves is a mistake. Now, in Richmond, in August, it's 91 degrees at minimum, right? With what feels like 91% humidity. It's hotter than Hades outside. But I also look around at all the football coaches that are used to doing this and do this every day and every year and have for 30 years, and they're all wearing very light, breathable, long sleeves. So I go on, I think it was Adidas's website. I surfed around Nike, Adidas, saw those, and I was like, how quickly can I get some lightweight, long sleeves sent to me? And sure enough, found some stuff, and a couple of days later, I'm out there in long sleeves, and everyone's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not getting sunburned. I don't want leather skin. And 5 days later, everyone else is like, oh my God, I'm so sunburnt. And I'm like, I feel great, suckers. And every year since then, since 2016, when I go out to training camp or OTAs or whatever, and it is hot as could be outside, and I'm wearing sleeves that are light and breathable, everyone looks at me like I'm crazy, and everyone feels like they have to get their set of remarks off. Everyone has to be like, oh, hey, Hoff, are you hot? And so I came up with a new comeback today, Anthony. I came up with a new comeback today.
Uh-oh.
Which is, the first person to say something, well, let's see, who was first today? It might have been Phillips, might have been first today. Standig was there. Kime was there. Kime was being a rabble-rouser because that's who John is. But Fortier literally comes over from, a different conversation, is like, hey, dude, what the hell? And, gestures to my sleeves. And I was like, yeah, what about him? And he's like, I went with sunscreen. I was like, cool. He's like, aren't you hot? And I just looked at them and I go, aren't you? And they're like, well, yeah. And I go, that's the point. You find me the shirt that's going to make it cool when it's 80 degrees and 60% humidity, and I'll wear that shirt, and it's got to be professional enough to wear at camp. Until then, leave me, my sleeves, my hood up so my neck doesn't get burnt, alone. And then in a week, when you're like, oh man, I'm so sunburnt, I don't want to hear from you. I don't wish that upon you. I don't want you to get skin cancer. I don't want you to feel the pain of a sunburn. That doesn't result in some more serious thing. I don't want that. I don't want you to hurt. I don't want you to suffer. We're all going to be hot. One of us is going to be sunburned. It ain't going to be me. I don't understand why everyone else not only is not wearing sleeves, but why everyone feels the need to comment on it every single year. Guys, ladies, none of the ladies. The ladies don't say this because women are smarter than us. Fellas, get some new material. That's all I'm saying.
Two things, Craig.
Yeah.
One, can you do the voice? I don't know what you did.
Hey, Hoffman, are you hot over there?
Yeah, I love
that one. You like that voice? That doesn't sound like anybody on the beat. But
it
if that's
gave
a character,
me Napoleon Dynamite, to be honest.
If that's a character we need to bring onto the show more often, I got it for you, Anthony.
Thank you, sir. Two, have you ever seen somebody wearing something that just made you hot? Maybe that's what you're doing to people. If I see you in a long sleeve in 90-degree weather, I might really start, feel even hotter.
Maybe.
Than
I
should.
Some of the people on the Commander stuff. DQ today was in an all black, and I know it's all light and breathable and team issue, but all black, baggier. The pants were a little baggier, and he had 2 layers of a shirt on, and I'm just like, dog.
2 layers.
One of the videographers. She was a female videographer. She had black yoga pants and an oversized black T-shirt on. that didn't look like a lightweight t-shirt. And I'm like, that's, yes, I wonder if you are hot in that outfit, that attire. And she's also carrying like a big giant camera because that's her job. Like, that's part of covering football. Like, you're going to be hot. It's hot outside. I was very annoyed that they decided to hold the press conference on the blacktop.
Yeah.
I don't know why that couldn't be done in the air-conditioned bubble. Like, I have questions about that. But in terms of attire, sure, there's sometimes you see people and you're like, that's probably not, but it's not my clothes. I'm not judging them. Let me wear my clothes.
Hey,
Me and my unsunburnt self.
I think that's just what was going through their mind. The thing is, you aren't wearing a coat. I've seen people wear coats in this kind of weather, which is insane. So I'm glad you haven't reached that level of sort of kind of insanity.
Mine's a specifically designed UV protective for when it's hot out shirt.
Craig, you'll be surprised about what you see here in the D.C. area. Just saying, man.
Yeah. We have another funny bit to do later in the show. It involves pull-ups and how many we can do. It started on Take Command, so it also involves how many pull-ups Logan can do. So we'll get to that later on in the show. When we get back, JP Finley, I don't know how many pull-ups he can do. I do know he's good at talking about football, and he's going to do that with us next. is the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 5:30, Justin Williams from The Athletic on a news story that he and Nicole Auerbach wrote about college sports and a $3 billion lawsuit that could change the landscape of it. But right now, back to today's top story, which, of course, is Commanders OTAs. And let's bring in someone that I watched quite a bit of practice with today. Anthony, please hit the magical introduction button.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in. Not my beat.
Host of B. Mitch and Finlay, and of course he's on your television as well on NBC4. It is JP Finley. What up, dude?
What up, man? I have a series of complaints or at least comments to make.
Okay, off we go.
One, did Ant say Bart Mitzvah in that promo?
Anthony, what's your verdict on your own vernacular there?
I did not say Bart Mitzvah. I said bar.
Bar, even though it did sound like one of the Simpson children. It did definitely sound like that, JP. I will admit that is a thing that you probably heard correctly, even if it's not what Anthony meant or even if what he said. I understand why you asked the question.
Thank you. All right, yes. That's number one.
Okay, that's number one.
Number two, I was listening to you guys. I don't think I have commented on your long sleeve shirts since at least Richmond. So
no, you're actually great in that department. Like, everyone else seems to get their shots in.
Guy makes the same joke every week. Like, he has the joke he makes about everybody, and he makes it. He just shoot, man. So you know John's going to bring that every time.
Yeah, no, Keim today was just piling on other people. Fortier was sincere in asking the same thing he's probably asked me at least once a year for the last 4 years.
Fortier's walking around with a shiner. He should keep his opinions to himself.
Maybe that's how we got the shiner. I don't know. I truly don't know how we got the shiner, so I'm not asking for trouble here. I'm just saying, like, sometimes that's how that goes.
No, he was playing hoops. He told me the story. Lastly, so I hear you guys talking about pull-ups, and
yep.
I do not, especially talking to you and Ant, who are very much fitness guys. I'm not pretending to be a fitness guy, but I think I could out-surpass your expectations for me on a pull-up bar.
Okay.
Like I have a pull-up bar at the house.
Okay.
And Ant was like, Ant says to me, I got faith in you, man. You can do at least one. And I told Ant to go bleep himself. I can do like 5 or 6.
Okay. That's that. You know, here's what I said, JP. I'll be honest with you because this is exactly what I told Anthony in the break. I thought you would be Mr. I can't do a pull-up, but I said I think he's wrong. I thought you were going to say 0 for yourself, but you'd actually be wrong about that, and you could at least knock out a couple.
Yeah, I mean, if B. Mitch is judging them, it might be like 2 or 3 because he's going to be a ball buster and not like my ankles have to hit the ground or something. But if it's just like I'm going to rip a couple pull-ups and I'm allowed to swing a little, I'll be all right.
So I promised the audience in less than 2 minutes we will be talking about Commanders OTAs, but I now feel compelled to tell the story of how this came up. We were doing a Take Command mailbag, and we got a listener question of whether I thought I could do more than Logan. And so we talked about it. And Logan, when he was in Chicago, apparently set the team record for pull-ups body weight. Like, he just is, like, we know Logan's freakishly strong, but it's very hard to do a pull-up when you're as big as Logan is. Like, as strong as he is, like, if it was like, hey, how much could you barbell row where you're picking up something that's not relative to your body weight? Like, Logan can row a small house. But, you know, at his playing weight, he was 280, still 270. And I think he said he got like 25 or something like that when he was in Chicago.
That's crazy.
And they were neutral grips, so your hands facing each other, and you had to come to a dead hang in between. And so he's like, I think I can get about 10. And he thought I could outdo him. I tested this morning. I have the video and everything. I hit 10. I thought it was 11 because my wife had started counting for me. And I guess she was counting like, this next one will be 11. I did have one more in the tank. I think I could have gotten him. But officially, Logan and I are tied at 10 pull-ups currently. A solid 1-2 dead hang in between. That's where we're at. That's where that came from.
I would not challenge either of you. So that's fine with me.
So to round this out, Anthony, how many do you think you could do?
I can do 15 at least.
At least, okay. Challenge is on.
All right.
Perhaps.
I can see Ant being really good, although you do have long arms, Ant, which kind of hurts you.
I do, but one of the kids challenged me like 2 weeks ago to do 18 pull-ups, and I did 18. So at least I can do 15.
Yeah, we also, Logan and I wound up doing ours not neutral grip, which is easier. So I think I could push 12 or 15 if it was neutral grip, based on my performance this morning.
I can drink more vodka than all of you.
That is true. There's no doubt about that. All right, JP Finley is with us here on the Hoffman Show. Let's talk some football. And JP, I've been trying to phrase this in a way that is not hyperbolic, that is not getting out ahead of itself. But based off what we've seen from Jayden Daniels so far, it would seem like things are trending where, at the very least, Jaden and Marcus Mariota are going to be fairly close. And if that's the case, I don't know why you wouldn't just start Jayden Daniels. Am I crazy to be thinking that already? Is it way too early? Am I misreading the performances? What have you seen from Jayden Daniels so far?
I mean, big picture, I don't think he's the starter. I don't think there's a real competition coming. I think Marcus knows it. I think everybody knows it. What the coolest thing I think with Jaden is kind of what you hear of the off the field performance of what he's getting done, like film study, all those sorts of things. That he's beating. John Allen today said that he's beating him into the facility, and Allen likes to be one of the first guys there. Allen gets there about 6:45, and Jaden's beating him there. Obviously, we know the stories from LSU about having to get his own key code to the facility and all that. But from a straight, what we're watching on the field, there's at least one or two moments every practice where you watch Jaden and you're like, wow, that's a pro. Like wow, that's a really high level play. And I think some of it happens in big moments, like that throw he hit to Dotson down the sideline, kind of right in front of us, Hoff, was just beautiful. But there was a moment where I think you were standing with Logan and I was saying right there, there are times where it seems like he's already kind of figuring out pre-snap what he wants to do. And granted, it's only 7-on-7, but the ball at times is out so fast and in good position to a guy that maybe is just running a little underneath dig. You know what I mean? It's just a quick hitter, but if you're able to see and execute those quick hitters early as a rookie when it's really difficult, it just speaks volumes about the type of ceiling the player has, I think.
No, I agree with that. I think it also speaks to the floor because I think the way they're mixing and matching personnel, both with the ones and twos playing with and against both quarterbacks. In other words, Jaden goes out there and he's got Terry and Jahan and everybody with him, and he's playing against Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu and whoever the starting secondary is of the day. And then everybody rotates but the quarterback, and then eventually the quarterback rotates, and it's the same thing. It's not like even last year where you're comparing Brissett with twos against twos versus Howell with ones against ones. These are pretty like-for-like reps in an offense that's new to both players, and Daniels is just flat-out performing better. I know we don't have any O-line, D-line yet. There's no protections he's having to deal with. There's no rush. There's no nothing. But of the reps that we've seen, the level is just very clearly different between Daniels and Mariota, and the advantage is not with the veteran.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's really, I don't think that's really going to be a real thing, even when we get to August. I think you bring Mariota for a very specific purpose of being the backup. I think everybody's aware of the situation. I get that it's something. I think Mariota kind of got asked about being the starter. I thought his answer was really good. I get some people are skeptical of Mariota's ability to be the number two because of the Netflix documentary in Atlanta. I think that was such a uniquely bad situation that it's not going to have much impact here. But to your greater point that Daniels already looks better than Mariota, I agree with you.
JP Finley with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, 10 to 2 daily over on 106.7 The Fan with B. Mitch. What else stood out for you today? They mixed and matched some more personnel. They introduced some new drills. As you walked away from practice outside of Daniels, what was top of mind for you?
One thing, I love how active the coaching staff is. And, during drills, on the field, both like in between reps with like real coaching, but also during reps and like kind of whether it's rushing the passer or pretending to be a linebacker that a tight end has to kind of fight off. Like it's fun to watch. I think they're keeping the practice fresh, like having the refs there today versus last week when we were there, they were kind of running those simultaneous 7-on-7. So a lot more guys were getting a lot more work with different position groups and stuff. Whereas today it was just the 1 7-on-7. Did you notice, and they didn't make them do a ton of it, but when they were doing 7-on-7, they had the beefy fellas running, not quite gassers, but they had them running on the other side field, which I was like, damn, you got the big guys running in May. From a individual performance, I thought Jeremy Chin was a guy I got to watch a little bit today. I thought he's big, man. And I think if his role is kind of like a box safety or something, I think he can help you a lot. I don't know that he can run like a true safety. I think I said it to Logan. The kid Yankoff just keeps making plays.
Yep.
And that's how you get noticed as an undrafted free agent. I'm curious if you noticed this. There was a play that almost like perfectly encapsulates the Emmanuel Forbes rookie season. It was in Mariota. They were doing the goal line 7-on-7.
Yep.
And the goal line 7-on-7 didn't go well, I don't think, for either Mariota or Daniels. It's just not a lot of real estate, and when there's no threat of the run, it's kind of the defense has a lot of advantages there. But Mariota's kind of rolling right, and Forbes has really good coverage on Diami, and the play just kind of keeps going, and then eventually Diami cuts back corner of the end zone, and Forbes realizes it like a hair too late. Mariota puts a good throw, and it's a good catch by Diami, and he's like a fingernail away from being able to for the PBU, and it's just like that just like has been the Forbes experience thus far, I'd say, for Washington.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Forbes next anyway. So that play is interesting because I actually feel like it's not even like got to reach a little bit further, whatever. Like you have to react quicker. And it's just reframing what you said, right? Which is if he sees that ball, that's an easy pick. And you just have to have the recognition because he's like in good position, which is the Emmanuel Forbes experience, right? He's in good technical position. He's there. There's a play to be made. And if you realize as that receiver is running away from you, if you just turn your head back, you'll probably see the throw coming and the quarterback's going to throw it right to you. And Mariota throws the ball right past Forbes as he turns around and the ball goes by him and he can't get his hands up fast enough because he just doesn't see the ball. I think that's it. Like that's the kind of stuff where for a guy that had such great ball skills and played with such great anticipation in college, I just kind of wonder where it went. Like what was he taught that has his mental game so off? Or is it just not translating to the NFL level, which is obviously a much bigger problem because you can change where his eyes are. You can change what he's looking at with technique and coaching. If he can't play at the speed, he can't process it fast enough, well, then he's not going to be successful in the league, period.
Well, and to your point, just like going one step further on the recognition side of it, like if you're playing red zone 7-on-7, like you've got help deep and to the side. Like you're in the end zone, bro. He's not going to beat you deep. Like he's not going to beat you to the edge. The zone literally ends, and so I think that should have like if he realizes, okay, Diami switched his route. And now he's breaking for the corner. Like, you should know how close you are to that corner to be in position to turn your head and make a play. And you don't want to – it's minutia, right? We're talking about a single snap in May, but it just –
Great point.
It just felt indicative of something larger.
Yeah, so the other question I was going to ask about with Forbes is Dan Quinn was asked about Forbes being a part of the return group today. We saw him return a kickoff. He was catching punts a couple weeks ago, and basically DQ was like – he didn't do it at Mississippi State, but he got his hands on a lot of balls, and he brought a lot of them to the house. Like, clearly he's got return skills. They're fantastic as a defender. We want to see if there's more opportunity there. Do you think there's more to it than that in terms of, like, we got to find special teams value for a guy that's not going to be a starting cornerback? Or is it just, hey, we're experimenting, getting to know these guys. Let's throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks?
DQ's official explanation was, we're trying to find unique talents for all our guys, just stuff we didn't know about them. and I like that from like an experimental mindset. There probably is some conversation about like, what do we have in Forbes? What else can we get out of him? Because what I've said with B is that, like, okay, like, you know what his liabilities are. And right now he's an extreme, almost unplayable defensive player when it comes to the run game. Like, you almost can't have him on the field. So you got to find some stuff that he does really well to overcompensate for that. And, like, ideally he's an asset with these ball skills we've heard so much about and not really seen. But all that said, bro, you can't put that dude on a punt return. He's too small. I mean, the type of high-speed collisions that happen on punt returns, and not to suggest that a guy like Jamison Crowder is big, but he's cagey and he's not a tall guy, but he's fairly, he's muscular for his size. I can't imagine Forbes playing on a punt return. I just can't envision that.
It feels wild. And today watching him again and being up close, I just still can't believe how skinny he is. Like, his ankles look like my wrists, and I'm not the biggest dude that's ever walked the planet.
Right.
It's nuts.
Although he did seem to be running with the ones today, as much as you could like assess that there were ones. He seemed to be out there.
Yeah, no, he was definitely up first today, and that's why I asked Dan the question that I did about the depth chart, because people were like, oh my God, Emmanuel's running with the twos last week. And I was like, how much do you guys care about the depth chart this time of year? And he's like, we don't. And I was like, that's what I thought. Thanks for confirming. JP Finley with us.
That was a good question, just to kind of get on the record for the depth chart chasers in May.
100%. Because, I mean, we talked about this earlier, JP, in the show, and I'm sure you and B. Mitch talk about this. This feels like a very B. Mitch type of topic. Like, they're not hitting yet. There's no way to order a depth chart when there's no physicality in the practice, because how you handle physicality is a pretty important part of football.
Right.
So just, felt worth, as you said, getting on the record. JP Finley, of course, host of B. Mitch and Finley, with us here on the Hoffman Show. This is the second straight year, JP, where we've seen very, very little run game work. Last year it was new. This year, we kind of had some of the macro discussions last year. What do you make of kind of the way they're handling this as a passing camp over these first couple of weeks? Is this just kind of the NFL we're in now, or do you look at some of the rushing results they had last year and get nervous about their ability to do it without focusing too much on it on the practice field in May?
That's a good question. I think it's the right approach, especially with a rookie quarterback that's learning a new offense. If an established quarterback and they want to work on the run install, go for it. But I think you've got a rookie quarterback, new offense, not to mention no O-line, no pads. Like, how much real run work can you get? And, to me, I think DQ talked about that. Maybe it was Cliff. I think it was Dan. Talked about that like 2 weeks ago and said, this time of year, these workouts are primarily for our skill position guys. And when we get to August is when it really starts to matter more for the linemen and the run game. And I think it's just an honest approach of what you can get done realistically. Like, what is the point of trying to set up your run install right now when I guess you can just kind of work through your own and line up your linemen? But I think it's the right approach. It'd be different if this was not even a guy like Mahomes, but somebody who's more established, like Baker in Tampa. If they want to work on the run game right now, like, go for it, because you know who the quarterback is, you know what the offense is. But here is just, there's so much to learn in such a short time frame.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with all that as well. Like, it's without the contact, because like Logan and I would talk about it last year, and Logan's like, well, you can work on the timing, you can work on the combinations. I do think there's something to like IDing guys and getting kind of visual looks at that, but you can do that in meeting rooms, and the timing is going to be different once there's real contact. So in some ways, you'd be building up kind of false reps. And so I don't know how much there is to that. All right, last thing I want to ask you about, a guy that stood out to me. What have you seen from Frankie Louvu so far? What's been your first impression of him?
Dude, the speed and athleticism, really stands out. It's been really impressive. I mean, most people will tell you his most impressive attribute is the ability to rush the passer, and obviously we're not going to see that in May. And if he can deliver in that scenario, like I think the staff is hoping and expecting, they might really have something there. He's been quite impressive. Size, speed, seems really smart. There was a play today where Mariota kind of scrambled out, and it almost looked like a designed scramble, which I find kind of odd in 7-on-7, but whatever. And Luvu chased him down, and in 7-on-7, nobody's getting hit, and et cetera. But if that was a real play, that quarterback needs to get out of bounds or slide because Luvu was about to break him in half. It was pretty impressive to see him get to the sideline like that.
No, that play is why I asked the question. His speed is crazy. Like, I am looking forward to when Jayden Daniels has a license to run, and he does, and seeing him and Luvu kind of run next to each other because it feels like Luvu's got that kind of speed. We'll see. Jayden Daniels is real fast, but definitely seems like there's a reason they gave that dude a 3-year deal and everyone else got 1-year deals. That doesn't mean that some of these guys won't be back, but you're like, oh, I see the long-term investment there. Got it. New podcast, Beltway Football Pod, JP and Mitch. Mitch told me that you guys were recording. I'm guessing that happened, or you told me you guys were recording. I'm guessing that happened. The people can go listen.
That has happened, and the people can go listen.
Excellent. And also, of course, you can listen to JP tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 106.7 The Fan, and he's on NBC4 with frequency as well on your television. JP, great to watch practice with you today, man. I'll see you next week in Ashburn, if not around the office sooner.
Take care, Hoff. Thanks, buddy.
You got it. JP Finley with us here on The Hoffman Show. When we get back, it's a new story in The Athletic from Justin Williams and Nicole Auerbach about a massive lawsuit that could once again change the landscape of college sports. Justin will join us to fill in the details next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see our pal Justin Williams from The Athletic, who has co-authored a story with Nicole Auerbach about a landmark case against the NCAA that is going to change the landscape of college sports yet again. We've seen a massive change due to NIL. This is going to change it even more. Justin, I will admit, I've read through the story, and I am a very confused person. There are a lot of layers to this story. So to you, like, where's the place to start? I'm sorry I don't have a better question, but, like, where's the place to start in understanding just how big of a deal it is? I mean, obviously the number $3 billion is going to be paid out in some form or fashion here is that kind of encapsulates the scope, but it doesn't begin to describe the impact that I think this is going to have. Where would you start in trying to describe that?
No, it's totally fair. It's a little bit of eating your vegetables when we're talking about this stuff, but it is important because it's going to have a huge impact, on the future of the sport and the sport moving forward. You're right that the big thing this week is the defendants in the House versus NCAA case, which is the NCAA and the power conferences, are basically voting to approve the terms of a settlement that they will reach, and that settlement will include, as we've reported, it's likely to include nearly $3 billion in back pay NIL damages, which is basically money that former Division I athletes could have earned if they could have earned NIL money. If you're wondering why you can sue over that, I have not done enough legal, expertise research to understand why you could do that. But basically, you can sue as far back as Division I athletes in the 2016-2017 season and say, hey, if I had the opportunity to make NIL money, I could have done that. I should, I should have access to be able to have those funds. And then the other part is kind of the forward facing, which is the revenue sharing that you talked about. And I think for most fans and for kind of the purposes of the people that follow the sport, that's the bigger deal, because it should be agreed to in the settlement that moving forward there will be revenue sharing from power conference teams only to athletes as soon as next season. Probably about $20 to $25 million per power conference program that can be distributed directly to athletes. And this is, college sports for the longest time was built on amateurism, right? College athletes couldn't take money, couldn't earn money. If this settlement is approved and is finalized, which will still take a couple months, we're going to be talking about your power conference programs, Ohio State football, Michigan football, USC football, paying money directly to their athletes. And that's just a huge change in what college sports has been, and kind of as we've known it. And if you're wondering why they're coming to a settlement with these big dollar figures, it's because if this case went to trial and the NCAA lost, it would be much worse. We're basically talking about the end of the NCAA. So there's a huge incentive here for the NCAA to settle, even though it means finding a way to pay $3 billion in back pay and, power conference schools paying $20 to $25 million a year moving forward in revenue sharing.
Yeah, I think I saw the number 20 billion in your story.
Yeah, this is Yahoo Sports. Ross Dellinger obtained kind of documents that were circulated, basically saying that if the NCAA were to go to trial in this case and lose, there's a thing called treble damages in an antitrust case. We're getting really into the weeds there. But that number that they would have to pay, instead of being $3 billion in a settlement, could be as high as $20 billion. And instead of being $3 billion paid over 10 years as part of the settlement, it'd be $20 billion immediately, which is basically a death knell for the NCAA if it came to that.
Justin, I'll remind you, you're on the radio in Washington, D.C. We're all dorks here. The weeds is where we live. Justin Williams from The Athletic is with us here on the Hoffman Show. So, God, there's so much here. We'll get to the payment and the structure because I think that's really interesting. Big conference, big schools, little schools. That's a huge part of this. But let's talk about the amateurism angle for a second. We've seen lawsuits about basically killing amateurism before, like the Northwestern football team wanting to unionize and the status of college athletes as employees. Would this settlement establish that? And if so, what does it mean? And if not, what does it mean? Like, what are they if they're clearly not amateurs, but also maybe not professionals either?
No, it's a good question. And yeah, the whole unionization and employment status has been a big topic of discussion with college sports. This settlement, believe it or not, has absolutely nothing to do with that. Athletes can earn money based on NIL. That was changed a couple off seasons ago. And basically the revenue sharing will come from the television contracts that these conferences sign. So all that money that the Big Ten and the SEC get from ESPN and CBS or whoever the power conference signed their deal with, that's really what that revenue sharing money represents. There's nothing to do with unionization, nothing to do with employment status. But it's relevant to that because that's kind of another legal battle that the NCAA is facing. And it goes to show that even if this settlement happens, if everything goes through, it's going to change a lot, but it's also not going to be the end. Like this is in some ways kind of a stopgap half measure in terms of the broader battle that the NCAA is fighting. This is just the one that was kind of the most immediate. And really, by making the settlement, the NCAA is kind of preserving its own existence. We talked about if it goes to trial and they lose, that could be the end of it. There's going to be other things like employment status that they're still going to have to figure out, but it actually has nothing to do with this case and the settlement that's been proposed.
With that said, I don't know if you guys have gotten here in your reporting yet or in reporting on this story otherwise, but if all of a sudden that stuff gets settled and it's like, okay, they are employees, are we talking about salary caps potentially, about minimum salaries, maximum salary? Like how far ahead is the NCAA planning? Because it seems like the whole time the NCAA has just tried to cover their eyes, scream la la la, and pretend like none of this is happening. And thus part of the chaos that has felt college sports or felt like it's taken over college sports the last couple of years because there are no rules. The NCAA doesn't seem to have any rules about all of this stuff. Is the NCAA essentially planning to create some rules if these things then go the way that many of the players have been fighting for at this point for a couple of decades?
Yeah, so a big part of all these legal battles is for a long time, the NCAA has essentially been lobbying Congress to grant them an antitrust exemption. And what that means is basically it would grant a ruling that for the NCAA that would say, no, these are college student athletes, they're students, they're not employees. And so all the things that come with employment status, which is collective bargaining and benefits and salary and all that kind of stuff, the NCAA wouldn't have to worry about that. This is part of the battle that's ongoing. And so a big part of this settlement is the NCAA for a long time has lobbied Congress, and Congress is like, why are we going to get involved and clean up your mess that you've created or you've neglected or whatever? So the NCAA is kind of hoping by saying, hey, look, we've made some efforts. We did a settlement. We're going to be giving our players money. We're going to be giving former athletes money. How about that antitrust exemption that we've kind of been asking you about for a while? The NCAA's hope is certainly that by taking this step and doing a settlement, again, if it all gets finalized, that will kind of appease Congress and they might say, sure, all right, we'll help you out here. There's certainly no guarantees that's going to be the case. So the NCAA is hoping maybe this will help their antitrust exemption, but there's certainly a chance that after this happens, someone might say, well, hey, this got negotiated a revenue sharing settlement and the players had no input. They get to decide how much they're going to get. They have no say in this. And I think that could possibly ratchet up the kind of the unionization or employment status fights even a little bit more.
Justin Williams from The Athletic with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, so another big part of this story that you and Nicole reported out is how this affects the individual schools. And their big schools versus the little schools is a big part of that. Big conferences, little conferences. And I know there was an update today. Can you, to the best of your abilities, explain kind of this dichotomy of the impact this settlement could have on schools depending on the size and revenue that they bring in and thus the budgets available to them?
Yeah, so it helps to think about the lawsuit and the settlement in two parts. There's the backward-facing part, which is paying out the retroactive NIL damages to college athletes going back to 2016. And then there's the forward-facing, which is the power conference revenue sharing. So all Division I schools, from kind of your low major, NCAA tournament Cinderellas that people might know, all the way up to the top of the power conference programs, are going to have to contribute to that pot of money that goes towards the back pay damages, that $3 billion settlement figure. Now, there have been some smaller universities, smaller Division I programs who have kind of raised some complaints this week, basically saying, hey, this lawsuit went after the power conferences and the NCAA for, all this money they didn't give out for the television contracts. Us, the smaller schools, we don't get that. We don't get millions of dollars every year from TV. we shouldn't have as basically a big of a financial burden in terms of paying back these damages. For the power conferences, their argument would be, well, we have to chip into this $3 billion pot, and we also have to pay $25 million per year moving forward in revenue sharing, whatever that is. I think the upshot would be for the past decade, probably plus maybe 2 decades, there's been this gap that's been created between the power conference programs and the non-power conference programs, right? You see it specifically in football, but it's certainly happening everywhere. The SEC and the Big Ten are at the top. They're the richest. Then there's the Big 12 and the ACC. The Pac-12 fell apart. And then there's everyone else that doesn't make nearly as much money. Even though those power conference programs are going to be paying out athletes moving forward, to me, this just furthers that gap between the power conference and the non-power conference. Because look, if you're a top athlete, maybe in the past you went to a school like Cincinnati when they were in a group of 5, or Tulane, or in college basketball, maybe you go to a Big East program or something like that. Well, now if the power conferences are able to pay you directly from a pot of money every year, there's different incentives for those schools. And it just feels like a gap that already existed between the power conference and the non-power conference. It's only going to grow and get bigger and move towards whatever that future looks like. Super conferences, super league, I don't know. I think we're still a few years away from that, but definitely this is another step in that direction that we've seen happening over the past couple of decades.
Are there any concerns from the schools themselves about like actually paying this money, right? And I guess this would also intersect with the other big story in college athletics this week, which is that there's private equity money coming. I think my pal Evan Obi Williams over at Sportico reported on that, amongst others, that there's private equity money that's now going to be coming. Like, we know some of these colleges have these massive endowments and basically endless cash from boosters, but some of the smaller schools don't. Some of the smaller schools do, by the way, and especially on the endowment side, because they're really rich for academic reasons, not athletic reasons. But are there any schools stepping up being like, I don't know that we can pay this money back, or it's going to fundamentally change our athletic program for some amount of time, and there's probably Title IX considerations there and all these other things. Like, what are some of the other maybe complicating factors that don't affect everyone, but certainly affect some schools here?
Yeah, you're definitely hearing, whether it's from those small schools or even from some of the maybe smaller power conference schools, that are talking about, hey, this could result in cutting sports, in, cutting resources that we give to athletes and scholarships, and cutting administrative positions. Jamie Pollard, who's the athletic director at Iowa State, Iowa State's a power conference school. They have a $100 million annual budget. But his point was, all right, if we have revenue sharing, Iowa State can't just next year immediately start having a $120 million budget. So where are those cuts going to happen? What are they losing in order to start paying out that revenue sharing? The revenue sharing is optional for these power conference teams, but look, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, they're going to do the revenue sharing. And so you think all these other power conference teams, in order to stay competitive, they're going to at least opt into doing some amount of it. Maybe it's not that top $25 million mark right away, but they're going to want to do it because they're going to want to stay competitive. And those schools are going to have to make some decisions on things that they might lose. For the smaller schools, all right, if you're paying $2.5 million a year in terms of that back pay damages, that might mean nothing to a power conference school. That's a lot of money to these, smaller schools that don't have FBS football. It's the same deal. They're going to have to make decisions on cutting scholarships, cutting sports potentially. So you're right in terms of the fallout of this settlement. It does save the NCAA in a sense. It allows them to kind of control their future, at least in the short term, a little bit more than they would if they went to trial. But for a lot of these schools, there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that probably have to be made moving forward.
Last question for Justin Williams here. Of course, Justin with The Athletic, college sports reporter. He and Nicole Auerbach and some of their colleagues at The Athletic wrote about this case, House versus the NCAA. It's a class action lawsuit. There's been updates the last couple of days, so a lot of dense reading on The Athletic if you would like to go catch up on all of it. But I talked about this a little bit earlier in a question, Justin. The NCAA has been extraordinarily reactive for decades in how they've handled all of this. Do you think that getting this resolution ultimately will change the way that organization operates to being more proactive in the way they handle changing landscapes, whether it comes to media, athlete relations, NIL, literally anything where they have traditionally been reactive and perhaps get ahead of anything for once?
that's going to be their argument. That's going to kind of be, I think, the narrative that they put forward. You saw that a little bit. People remember, I think it was in December, January, there was this subdivision proposal that Charlie Baker put out that, kind of hinted at some of these settlement things about, separating, some of the top programs and being able to do revenue sharing. That I think was an example of them saying, hey, for a long time, all we did was fight. We fought against the future. We fought against paying athletes. We fought against moving the sport forward. Charlie Baker is trying to say, we're not doing that anymore. This settlement, they're going to point to as an example of that. For the longest time, we got criticized as the NCAA for not paying players. Now we're doing that. And we're even paying some of the former players and giving them back pay. And again, is that altruistic? I don't know. It probably has a lot to do with them going to Congress and asking for antitrust exemptions. But to be fair, it is a difference from what the NCAA has done for large, swaths of the past couple of decades. So I think you're right. I think that's certainly the narrative that the NCAA is going to put forward, which is like, hey, we're doing things differently. But I also think that part of that is, for so long, they kind of just put up the dam and tried to keep the legal battle and all these fights away from them. And it's pretty clear at this point that the dam is breaking.
Yeah, if it's not already broken and they're under 11 billion feet of water. Justin Williams with us here on the Hoffman Show. Justin, always great to find an excuse to chat, and this is a pretty good one, my friend. Really appreciate your time as always.
Definitely. I know it's in the weeds, but I appreciate you guys having me on and doing my best to make it not be such a bore.
Absolutely. That is Justin Williams with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back here on the Team 980, we'll get you set up for our Pick 6 at 6. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. So we're just gonna dive in, Anthony. Our pick 6 is coming up in a second. I haven't checked in on the chat today. What kind of nonsense do we think is in the chat today?
I'm not gonna lie. I did glance over at the chat, and somebody said something about pull-ups.
I see construction workers in Florida wear long sleeves in the summer because they know people that are outside every day know you wear sleeves outside in the summer because it's hot out and you got to protect yourself. It's important. Let's see. People hoping that Brandon Coleman works out, all that. Yep. Okay. The chat's not too crazy today.
It's not live.
What?
I said it's not live today.
I mean, sometimes I tell people when they watch on YouTube, you get 2 shows. You get whatever's going on in the chat plus whatever we're doing. Great stuff from Justin Williams on this NCAA lawsuit. And it's just so funny to me, Anthony, because literally forever, like, the NCAA could have avoided the utter chaos that it has found itself in by taking charge of its own situation. And instead, it's just like, no, we'll let them sue us if they get mad. Oh, now we're on the defensive. And as a general rule in life, you never want to be on the receiving end of a lawsuit from Jeffrey Kessler. People that are listening that are lawyers or in the law community already know this. Kessler is one of the most successful sports lawyers in the country. Amongst his he's worked on multiple NCAA cases over the years. He was also the U.S. Women's National Team lawyer for the equal pay lawsuit. Cha-ching. They won that one. And he's the lead guy. As soon as I read that in the story, I was like, oh, I know where this is going. NCAA is about to fold like a 2-cent folding chair. Actually, like a really nice folding chair. Because it's going to work. They're going to fold. And so this is the most NCAA thing ever. You are reactive. You don't get ahead of things. You try to hold your position for 25 years too long, and you wind up owing $3 billion. Perfect. No notes. None whatsoever.
They got it, though. $3 billion.
Yeah, because they haven't paid paid the athletes forever. They better have it. I know that there's other sports that don't that was the other thing. It's like, oh, well, if we don't pay the athletes that are playing football, then we can have field hockey. And I'm like, how much are you paying the football coach again? What kind of money is going to that? How nice is that locker room?
Texas.
Yeah, they spent money on stuff that was an arms race. And sure, the facilities are great, and I'm really glad that even non-rev sports get educational and academic or academic/educational and athletic opportunities. Like, the model certainly helped a lot of people go to college and a lot of things, but I think that was presented as a choice, as if there was only allowing the poor non-rev kids to go to college and have sports and not pay the players, or we pay the players and all that goes away. And I think what you're quickly learning is that ain't the case. And by the way, if you let some of the non-rev sports earn NIL money, they actually become bigger stars, and you might actually earn revenue on that. Women's basketball was a non-rev sport not long ago. South Carolina is printing money. What Dawn's built down there. Iowa, the last couple of years, is printing money. LSU's printing money on women's basketball. And the same can happen in other sports. Like, I think of where we went to school at Syracuse, right? Like, I bet you some of the best lacrosse players up there probably have some NIL deals. And that's probably bringing in more money for lacrosse. Even if the money is going to the players, it elevates the star power of the players, the cachet of the players, and thus a non-revenue sport brings in more people and could turn that balance sheet around. So how much, for as much as it's costing them now, this $3 billion, imagine how much it's cost them over the years by cutting off their nose to spite their face because they wanted amateurism. And these are the people educating us.
Bad stuff, man.
Not a good look for higher education. Not much is these days. Obviously, there's some tremendous professors and academics and all of that, but God, that stuff's expensive. Just the administration of it all is not ideal, boys and girls, not ideal. When we get back to the Commanders, back to OTAs, it is our Pick 6 at 6, the 6 biggest headlines delivered to you at 6 o'clock. It's the Hoffman Show, final hour here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We will set you for Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals at 6:30. Of course, real things, real people said into real microphones, including why Bobby Wagner is not a fan of the East Coast for a reason that I am also not a fan of the East Coast, coming up at 6:45, but just after 6 o'clock on a day that I spent in Ashburn, it's time to make sure that you have all your top headlines in one place. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Oh, that leader might just be Jayden Daniels. Now, of course, in that introductory bite from months and months ago, Adam Peters was the target of Josh Harris's comment. But Jayden Daniels is really starting to stand out as a guy who might be ready to take over QB1, not just by training camp, not just by week 1, but like by the end of the spring. He looked really, really sharp today. And while there is still so much more to learn about quarterbacking for him at the NFL level, because he's been on the job for less than a month. The draft was April 25th. It's May 22nd. He has been a Commander less than a month. But he is certainly executing this offense, in my opinion. The test that is in front of him, he is grading higher than Marcus Mariota already. The speed with which he gets through his progressions, the accuracy, some of the reads where he's like looking guys off and creating space and giving guys a chance. I mean, even this little thing from today, they're in 2 minutes. He gets through his progressions. He realizes the play is dead and he just throws the ball out of bounds. Like he looks downfield and throws it intentionally over a receiver's head downfield. No, he's still in the pocket, but no intentional grounding, no wasted time. It's just, let me get the ball out, let me live to see the next play, and let me make sure the clock stops. That's big-time stuff from a processing and kind of a game management standpoint. You know, that term game manager, if that's all you are, then maybe you're going to be winning just kind of with you, not because of you. Jayden Daniels has that trait, but he's also got a bunch of win because of traits as well. And the praise is pretty high from people who have been around this league a long time. His head coach, who you hear from in a minute, and the guy who's been tasked in backing him up, Marcus Mariota, talking about the rookie who he's technically in a fight with for the top job of quarterbacking the Commanders.
Yeah, he looks good. I think he really moves well, throws the ball well, and for a young guy that's coming in, seems to really command the offense. And I think that's important. I think that's very important in the quarterback position, to be able to stand in front of these guys, especially older players, and kind of nail it and say, I got this, I got it figured out. So I think he's done a great job of that. And we just got to continue to help him grow and develop. And, I think at the end of the day, when we're all competing in that room, it makes every one of us better.
No doubt. And it's not just when you're on the practice field. It's how you carry yourself behind the scenes. And that's where Dan Quinn focused in when talking about the number 2 overall pick.
As we're getting started, it's a big passing camp. So for the quarterbacks, they're getting some really good looks. There's a number of coverages now that have gone in, from the first day of where it was maybe just 3 deep and man-to-man. So to see that type of progress from he and from the other quarterbacks, I think that's good. In weeks ahead, we'll add team things to it and blitzes and, a pocket and that kind of stuff. But I think what jumps not only off the tape here, what you guys don't see in the meeting room is just the competitive nature and the learning and the command that he has already. And so that's something that speaks to his work ethic.
No doubt about it. There's no questions about the work ethic. John Allen actually said today as well that he was always one of the first guys in the building. Not anymore. I mean, he still is one of the first guys, but when he shows up for work, Jayden Daniels is already there, which certainly matches what he did at LSU in that final season and how he really became a professional and ultimately worthy of that number 2 pick by the end of his Heisman-winning senior season. Number 2, Anthony. Number 2, please.
Number 2.
Number 2 is a hypothesis that I wanted to put to the test today, and it really didn't take much of a test. I just asked Dan Quinn directly about the depth chart, because last week, Emmanuel Forbes, the practice that we saw, OTA, I think it was number 1, he was with the second team. And it was like, whoa, what does that mean? Does it mean anything this time of year? And especially with how they structured practice, in my mind, I was like, I'm pretty sure this means nothing. They're just mixing and matching, and for all we knew, we were there Tuesday last week. On Wednesday, he was working with the ones, and sure enough, to skip ahead, like today, he was working with the ones. He was the first corner out there, along with Benjamin St. Juste, instead of Michael Davis, who was the number 2. So I just, with the way they structure practice and everyone getting pretty equal reps, I was pretty sure Dan Quinn would answer my question like this, but the question was, at this point in the calendar, does the depth chart matter? Or are you looking at other things, and eventually you'll start the evaluation process down the line?
If you look, big picture-wise, there's certain parts of our identity that we'll be able to hit now. The speed, the execution of finishing plays downfield, the defense, the way they break, the way they run to the ball, like that's an identity part we're putting together, and I'm seeing, signs of that moving forward. The things that we don't get to see right now are the physical parts of it. Like that's not what this time is for. So what areas and knowing what to compete at that time. So in this time, it's competing, man, can I learn these details and can I really go execute really quickly, communication. So not as much of the evaluation it is the learning to go, but I do want to see that speed and see the guys communicate and the chemistry that goes. But as far as the depth chart is, not really right now. That's not part of it. We want to get as many guys, as much reps as we can, and then as we get into camp, then we'll be able to start building that as we go, which would include the preseason games.
And that's what they've done with the structure, again, of practice to make sure everyone gets the same amount of reps in pretty much every drill. Now, that said, going back to Daniels a little bit, there were some drills today where I feel like Daniels got a few more reps once they finally got out of these kind of equal drills, some of the air raid inspired passing drills where all 4 quarterbacks are throwing, as well as one of the coaches to get 5 receivers working at a time, all 4 quarterbacks working at a time. It's a really efficient way to practice. But when you get out there, only 1 quarterback can be out there during a team drill. They had some of that today. And even though Marcus Mariota went first, Jayden Daniels got more. So the depth chart, it doesn't matter. It's May. And even if it does matter to say like, okay, well, right now this player's here, that can all change in 2 practices once you add pads and contact and all that kind of stuff in August. With that said, number 3. Emmanuel Forbes was with the ones today, and he looks similar to last year, and I'm not going to freak out about that by any stretch. I don't freak out about pretty much anything as related to football in May, because why would you? There's so much time for him to continue to learn, and people learn at different speeds, and the breakthrough could come where he masters what it is that they want from him, and he all of a sudden is great. But there's a play today, we talked about it with JP Finley an hour ago, where Forbes is trailing De'Ami Brown in a red zone situation. Play breaks down, scramble. Brown break towards the back corner of the end zone, and Emmanuel's in pretty good position chasing him, but there's just not an awareness of where Marcus Mariota is, where he is looking, and that the ball is coming in his direction. Great touchdown catch by De'Ami. That probably could have been a pick, if not at least a PBU, that never touches De'Ami's hands by Forbes. And so I do wonder, as he is being a part of the kick return rotation and the punt return rotation, if they are trying to plan for him not being a starter, but with it, being a first-round pick in the second year, he's going to be on the roster. But it's not like he's going to be a gunner on special teams. Like, part of the problem is he doesn't tackle very well and is not necessarily a super physical player that's wanting to stick his nose in there and capable of sticking his nose in the places you need to stick your nose to be a special teams demon, just a super physical type of player. And so if he's got return value, that would seem very helpful to make use of him not being essentially a dead roster spot who's not starting and not playing teams on game day. I also do think there's a bigger picture here where Dan Quinn and his coaching staff is trying to learn this roster and see how they maximize everybody. So Quinn was asked before practice today about Forbes being a part of that punt return rotation.
Right off the bat, we know there's more return opportunities, and so Emmanuel's got ridiculous return skills as a defensive player of returning. So we wanted to add that part of it. Although he didn't do it at Mississippi State, that doesn't mean he doesn't have the traits necessary. So we got a big, deep crew now that we're working people both in punt return and in kick return. And so just like everything, we're trying to, find out what unique things a player has and how to feature them. That not only will be during this time of year. Can he be a punt returner? Can a safety come down to play dime? Can a tight end split out wide? Those are things that it takes time through training camp. One player may be able to, another player may not. And so it does take a little bit of exploring, but that's like our job as coaches to find any unique traits that the players have, and then how would we feature those unique traits, and trying to find the things that people can do versus the things that they can't do.
I love that so much from Quinn. And there's kind of a micro discussion about Forbes and a macro discussion about Quinn here. The micro discussion about Forbes is distilled to the shrug emoji. I don't know what to make of Emmanuel Forbes. I need a lot more information, and we will get more information as he continues to play throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer. But I do think, just seeing him again today, and he's so damn skinny. And he's not he is the skinniest player I've ever seen in the NFL. And it's really hard to be an exception to that dramatic of an exception to the type of body you need to play in this league. And maybe he's it. Maybe. But the fact that he hasn't come back noticeably bigger or hasn't changed his whatever, either this is just who he is and they're fine with it, or they probably wish he had come back with a little bit bigger and done a little more work in the weight room, whatever. And it just feels like that should have happened between year one and year two. The macro discussion about Quinn is that his willingness to explore everything and be thorough is fantastic. Not leaving stones unturned, making sure, testing things out. That's what this time of year is for. It's about mastering the basics and exploring what possibilities exist. Now, if you're still exploring possibilities in late August, we got issues. You should know what people do by then. But that's because you figured it out now. I love that. Great leadership from DQ and the organization, but also there's so many great leaders in the locker room, which wound up kind of being the topic of the day today.
Number 4.
One of those leaders, if not the leader now, is Bobby Wagner, who was a bit of a surprise when he came to Washington, not only because he's the type of player that has typically not come to Washington for, 20 plus years, but because they signed Frankie Louvu, and we thought he was going to be the middle linebacker, and all of a sudden, a couple of days later, wait, what? The Commanders signed Bobby Wagner? So what were those conversations like between Wagner, Dan Quinn, and Adam Peters that convinced him, Wagner, that Washington was the right place for him?
Me and DQ we always kept in touch. We always, had an open relationship. I don't think we talked about trying to build things, in Seattle, because I think, what we built in Seattle was something special, and it just needs to be left alone. You know what I mean? So obviously there's things that we can take, from that culture. There's things that we can, bring here that can, I think, benefit. But it's really about creating your own space, your own energy, and, seeing what we can do with it.
I think that's interesting because Bobby Wagner was a young player. Dan Quinn was, relatively speaking, a young coach in Seattle. The relationship was certainly different. Quinn, was experienced, but I believe that was his first DC job, certainly in the NFL level. So there's some learning on the job there. Wagner's a young player, and now they come to this at very different stages of their lives and careers. Wagner on the way down, although still tremendously effective, but not the young hyper athlete that he was when he was younger, and obviously has a dozen years more of experience. Meanwhile, Quinn, been a head coach before, now considered when he's in the coordinator position, one of the absolute best D coordinators in the league, without question, although I guess with the results they had in Seattle, that was not really in doubt for very long. But the established nature of who he is, and still talking about, hey, we have to create a space where you can create something unique and not trying to recreate something that was in Seattle or what Quinn had in Atlanta or Dallas or what Wagner has experienced in his years beyond Quinn in Seattle or what he had in LA with Sean McVay, et cetera, on down the list. So I think that openness is great, and I think it probably will help contribute to finding what the right mix is here. I'd be so curious to hear more from John Allen and Terry McLaurin and some of the established guys here about how Wagner's approached that, because he is a new voice in the room, and there's so many new faces that, like, you know, so many new guys that aren't familiar with Allen and McLaurin anyway, but they're familiar and recognize them as like, oh, those are the main guys in burgundy and gold. To look up and be like, oh, Bobby Wagner, and to be able to come in and just kind of take on that leadership role can be challenging, and it's something you have to navigate. But Wagner's so respected that I have no doubt that's been something that he, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler have taken on. And I also loved a quote from Quinn today when he was asked about the leadership, and he's like, look, we definitely brought these guys in because of who they are, but they're ball players first, and they got to focus on what they're doing, and they're doing a great job of managing that so far. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are 2/3 of the way through our Pick 6 at 6, where we take the 6 biggest Commander storylines and lay them all out for you. And on the day of our second open practice for the media out in Ashburn, my 5th observation / takeaway was just how intentional the offensive coaches are. And I say offensive coaches not to say that the defenses aren't. It's just where we stand on the field, or where I was standing today, I could see the offensive coaches. I have no doubt the same exact thing is happening with Joe Witt Jr. and his staff on the other field. It's just a football field away. But watching Cliff Kingsbury coach and watching the intentionality and the purpose, like, that guy walks like he's got somewhere to be. And there is a sense of urgency, but also confidence that I think really establishes a great environment to work in. And I think you see the results. I mean, obviously with Ron, first it was Scott running the offensive stuff, and there's no urgency to anything with Scott Turner here. You could go back to Jay, like, he would get in modes where I would see that. Sean was always like that, which I think is interesting and noteworthy. When Sean McVay was the offensive coordinator, there was a crispness to things and attention to detail to things that I think is really high level. And actually, even on that front, I'll say this real quick, up to the DQ level of things, there's a moment today where they're running 2-minute, and Bryson Tremaine does not get lined up as quickly as DQ and Cliff and everybody wants. And so after the drill, Tremaine's on the sideline, and it should be mentioned that Tremaine's had a tremendous spring so far. He's having a really good time, so sorry that his name is coming up for Bryson in this particular moment, but I thought it was a great moment for Quinn, and he just is like, hey, dude, like, you got to get on the line. Like, you got to get lined up. And for the head coach to be locked in on that type of details, a play style, an intentionality type of thing, sets a tone. And Cliff, just his general urgency to be like, all right, we did that. That was good. Now we're here. Okay, we did that. That was good. Now we're here. It's a no BS type of thing, but in a very different way than Bieniemy, who just seemed to be yelling at people a lot. And there was an intensity and an intentionality, but I don't want to say it lacked confidence, but it wasn't a confident culture. I think Eric was really confident. I don't think the players were. And so I think watching Cliff coach in that way is very cool. I think it's effective. And that's great. But there's also so many other great coaches. I think Anthony Lynn carries himself in a very similar type of way. And in fact, Marcus Mariota actually talked about another guy who's almost a forgotten guy on this staff, and that is former Eagles quarterback coach and probably future offensive coordinator in the league, Brian Johnson.
He's awesome. I can't say enough good words and good things about him. He is also part of the reason why I came. I think from a football mind standpoint, he's one of the better ones that I've been around. And I just think the person itself, he's high integrity guy. And I just try to surround myself with that kind of people. You know, as you get older in this league, you've been around, you're just trying to surround yourself with good people. And I really think that's what they're building here.
I should say Johnson, not only former Eagles quarterback coach, but was the offensive coordinator last year as well, where Mariota was the backup. And again, I go back to not just the coaches having confidence, but instilling that in the players, and thus a confident environment. That's how you're going to nurture people into growth, which, by the way, with a very young team that's hoping to grow over the next couple of years, That's really important. So is having fun at work, which brings us to
number 6.
Ashburn has not been fun the last couple of years. The Commanders has not been a good place to be. Obviously, there's all the ownership stuff that's been happening for roughly 4 years. There's been stuff that was beyond Ron Rivera's control, including his own cancer. Like, there's just a heaviness and all of that. And not to mention, they were really bad at football the last bunch of years. Well, things are different now. And John Allen, for one, has certainly noticed. This is a good end to our pick 6 at 6.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's pretty known that we've had, our struggles in the past, but, it has been really good this year. So, I'm not going to talk about how great it is because at the end of the day, we still got a lot to prove, but I have a smile on my face coming to work every day.
And that's great. As I've said often, and I will continue to say, all you can do is pass the test that's in front of you. You can't take the fall test in the spring. And whether that's with Jayden Daniels or just be in a place that people enjoy showing up and want to do good work in, that is the test right now. And whether it's, again, Jaden and his teammates, especially his rookie teammates, learning, they're passing those tests. They're doing really well. And certainly DQ and AP and Cliff and Jowett Jr. and Daryl Tapp and everybody on that staff is making this a place that players want to be. And that means they're going to work harder for each other. And hopefully that does lead to the work getting done that leads to wins in the fall. That's our pick 6 at 6. Another one coming at you next week when the Commanders have their next OTA session. And then, of course, we got the mandatory minicamp coming up in a couple of weeks as well. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Mavs T-Wolves Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals tonight. We will preview it next. the Hoffman Show. Final half hour here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We've had a heck of a couple of days of interviews and for stuff that were on our digital platforms. I actually just dropped a new interview. Actually, I guess I don't even know if it's done uploading yet. With Andy Sullivan from the Washington Spirit. Much more dog content. Yesterday we had Casey Kruger on, also talking dog content because, they got pitch side pups on Friday night, but also really good soccer stuff. So I just sent that audio to Anthony. He's going to put it up in the podcast feed, and very funny exchange about the doggos coming up in Real Things, Real People Said into real microphones. Right now, though, Anthony, a look to head to tonight and the Western Conference Finals. Is this series as simple as who's the best player in it, Luka versus Anthony Edwards, or do you think that there are other questions that will matter in this series?
I think there are definitely more factors that will matter. I think the Mavs really rely on the three-point shot to, really bolster their offensive attack. And I think the Timberwolves, they're so good defensively that they do a good job of running those shooters off the perimeter and things of that nature. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch just because, again, Denver was a team that also relied on spacing, playing through Jokic, allow him to, be able to facilitate. And he couldn't really get his shooters involved. He couldn't really – well, I'm not going to say involved because it did go 7. But they end up losing. And I think, Minnesota was able to correct that en route to beating them in 7. So I think the 3-point disparity, I think, is going to be interesting to watch.
I think that's a good point. Obviously, 3-point shots can be a great eraser. I do think part of that, though, is the shot creation from those two superstars. Like, I really do think it does come down to if Luka Doncic dominates the series, and maybe, like, I guess there's a world where, like, he gets off a bunch of great passes and creates open looks and guys just don't knock him down, and that could be because Minnesota challenges shots really well and they have so much length and speed and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's possible. But I tend to think Luka is such a magnet defensively for all them same dudes that he's going to be able to get the kick out looks, and it's going to come down to whether or not they knock down shots. And if they do, then great. And if they don't, then people are going to blame Luka for passing too much or whatever it is. Anyway, and it's kind of going to come down to the efficacy of those players. Even if so, in other words, like if it's obvious that Luka is the best player in the series because he's got 37 points, 12 assists, and 10 rebounds a game, then like, yeah, that's going to matter. And you can say, well, he got those assists because guys hit shots. Sure. But I think also part of it is muddying up the read, just how much help the primary defender needs. And that's where I think, like, Jayden McDaniels has a massive job. And I heard Austin Rivers say this morning on SportsCenter. He thinks Jayden McDaniels, and there's some numbers to back this up, that McDaniels guards Luka better than anyone else in the league. So if that dude is on Luka and Anthony Edwards is on Kyrie, and you got Cat and especially Gobert lurking at the rim, that seems like a pretty tough matchup for Dallas. Now, Luka and Kyrie are so damn good that they'll probably have nights where that doesn't matter. But on a night-in, night-out basis, like, as long as Minnesota can continue to do what they want offensively and Dallas isn't exactly a juggernaut defensively, I'm not going to say like Minnesota's going to have an easy time winning the series because I actually think the best player in the series is Luka, which throws a whole wrench in the analysis. But from like a matchup team standpoint, I do like the answers that Minnesota has, especially the primary answers that Minnesota has available to them against an obviously very good, they're in the Western Conference Finals, Dallas team.
Yeah, the length that you just pointed out, Anthony Edwards being on Kyrie. You talked about Jaden McDaniels and his length. And I think Luka's, like, his health is also a big factor for this series just because.
That's a great point.
He was struggling against OKC, and it showed, like, in his play, not being able to have the same burst or not being able to get downhill the way he wants to. So I think that's also something to watch out for. I think on the defensive side of the ball, for the Mavs, who guards Anthony Edwards? That is a question I'm still trying to, figure out, because
it's a great question.
If you put PJ on him, then are you going to have Luka guarding Karl Anthony Towns, or what? I don't necessarily understand, how they match up from from the defensive side of the ball.
No,
somebody's gonna have a mismatch.
It's a great call, and I also, you think of some of the other stuff too, matchup wise. Gobert is so rangy and so long. How does that affect? He's one of the rare guys that can, if Luka's driving to the rim and you have the lob situation to Gafford or Lively, he can challenge the pass / prevent the shot and also challenge the lob. That's unique. That's why he's the defensive player of the year. And that's kind of the stuff where he's best versus I got switched onto a small. Now I have to dance in space. If I'm Dallas, I'm hunting Gobert in switches, and I'm trying to make him guard Luka on the perimeter. But you're dead right when you flip the floor. By the way, it is so funny to pull up the Dallas roster. Team leaders, points, Luka. Rebounds, Luka. Assists, Luka.
Don't tell me steals.
No, Kyrie's got steals, and Derek Jones Jr., of all people, has blocks.
Yeah.
But in terms of who guards Ant, I mean, if Maxi Kleber can come back, that is huge for them, which is a sentence that you don't necessarily want to say when you're talking about your viability to win a playoff series. Maxi Kleber is a good player. I don't want to be relying on Maxi Kleber.
Probably going to be Derek Jones.
PJ Washington's probably your best option.
Yes, he's the best option. I just don't know if you want him getting in foul trouble.
See, I mean, the point of having him is to play him.
Yeah, I mean, you play him, but I don't necessarily know if you put him on the best player it's a gamble. It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the world's greatest option. I would rather have many other players at my disposal, but I mean, I would say if I was matching it up, I would put PJ Washington on Ant.
Okay.
Because he's got a little more size to him.
Okay.
Right? I think if Derek Jones Jr. is on Ant, Ant is too strong for him.
But he's long though. He's 6'8".
He's long,
6'7".
he's rangy, but he's he's not the world's smartest defender. And he's also Ant's gonna drive through his chest.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. However, this goes back to the Bomani Jones take on Karl Anthony Towns. Is Cat I'm going to use Bomani's words because it's the hotter take and it's actually easier to explain, and I can't think of a more delicate way to say it. Basically, Bomani's I think Karl Anthony Towns is lazy offensively, and he'd just rather be out there and shoot than go down the block and work hard. Does Karl Anthony Towns, for lack of a more delicate way to put this, I don't completely agree with that sentiment. I think that's harsh, but is Karl Anthony Towns willing to go down on the block and do work if you put Derek Jones Jr. on him? Because if Cat's going to be a perimeter player and all you need to do is get a hand up and get some length and guard some pretty basic drives, you basically treat him like a stupidly tall perimeter player, not a power forward center who's going to kill you on the block. And if that's the case, Derek Jones Jr. can guard him. Not, again, guard him is a relative term, but you're not instantly dead with that matchup. So that inverse relationship between Cat and Ant, it becomes really important because obviously Gafford's going to be on Gobert. Luka can then hide on McDaniels to the extent that that's hiding. It does make the cross-matching easier for Dallas or for Minnesota in transition. McDaniels is not going to have to find Luka, but I would just put him on there. And then Kyrie, for size reasons, is guarding Conley. And there's your starters on starters. But honestly, I think that's how I would handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Karl Anthony, what he tried to do against Aaron Gordon didn't necessarily work. He did try to play a little bully ball against Aaron Gordon. It didn't necessarily work. I think against Derek Jones.
Doing that against Aaron Gordon is stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking, but I think doing that against Derek Jones, I think he's going to have some success. Also, even against Jokic, he showed signs where he catch the ball on the mid post and drive left, drive right, shoot a floater. here and there. So as long as he's like being aggressive, I think it's going to bode well for the Timberwolves. I just hope they don't get out of their style of basketball and go searching for matchups, because that's how they got on the hole against Denver in Game 7. They were trying to, isolate people, and it just didn't work out for them.
Let me throw one more name at you to guard Edwards. He didn't play at the end of the Oklahoma City series, and we're talking about for like 6-7 minutes a game here. We're not talking about as a primary matchup.
Okay.
But the Australian wonder kid, Dante Exum, he's on the Mavs roster. He's 6'5", 215. He's long as hell, former top 5 pick because people projected him to be an excellent defensive player. Wound up being kind of a bust, busted out of the league, went over, played in Europe, went back to Australia, and then found his way back into the league because he just matured. He was like 18 when he was drafted. I mean, he's still only 28 years old, but he's a guy that has like the size, length to at least be a nuisance to Edwards, and because he's probably playing 10 minutes or less per game, which he played like between 5 and 8 for the most of the games that he played in the Oklahoma City series before Dallas shortened its rotation and he didn't play at all in the final couple games.
Yeah.
Like, he can just go, what's to the wall, and like, I don't care if you use 6 fouls in 7 minutes. Like, you're big enough to be annoying. Go be annoying. Like, if I'm Jason Kidd and it's the Western Conference Finals, I'm doing stuff like that, and Exum's the kind of player that I think can do that. Plus, the Australians are dirty players, obviously. So, if you're going to stick someone to go out there and just go ham, then obviously you pick the Australian. For all our Australian friends, please do not take that previous comment seriously. That was very much a joke. All right, Mike.
I think is this kid Australian?
Who?
No. Josh Green. Yeah, he's Australian as well.
Two Australians on him.
Josh Green is actually the guy I think they'll have coming off the bench to guard Anthony. But his ability to actually hit shots is, I think, why he's been, he's gotten more minutes than Dante Exum. Dante Exum during the season actually was hitting some shots, but down the playoffs, like, he hasn't really been able to hit. Josh has actually been very effective from 3, and he'll pick up 94 feet. So I think he's the guy that that's going to come in and relieve whoever Anthony Edwards did.
Totally. I think you're probably right there. Green, 6'5", 200 pounds. Exum, 6'5", 215.
Ooh.
So you talk about that size to try to be a little more physical. And I'm not necessarily saying being physical with Anthony Edwards is going to end in your favor, but like, Exum's got the body type to do it. Green is overall probably the better player, though, and I do think we'll see some time on Edwards. So going to be fun to watch. 8:30 tonight on TNT. I got the Wolves in no, wait. I said the Mavs in 7 the other day. I'm so flip-floppy on this series. I don't know. Who do you got?
I already told you what I'm doing. Wolves in 6.
That's where I kind of want to land after this discussion. But I don't trust them.
At first I did say 7.
I almost got the words out of my mouth, and then I was like, I don't trust the T-Wolves.
Yeah,
but I really do trust Anthony Edwards. Screw it. Mavs in 7. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, real things where people said into real microphones, like me not being able to make up my mind on a prediction. Wrapping up here on the Hoffman Show on the Team at 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up on the show tomorrow, never read the comments. Linnell Willingham joins us in studio, and then we'll see what else we got from the NBA playoffs, and who knows what else happens in the wild and wacky world of sports. But we do have some very, very good real things real people said in real microphones, and thus it is time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Bobby Wagner is a guy who grew up out on the West Coast and then played his NFL career on the West Coast and is now living life on the East Coast as a linebacker for your Washington Commanders. And he has discovered something that sucks about the East Coast.
You said it's your first time on the East Coast. Do you have any challenges, or what are you expecting
You
with
know,
that
the
lifestyle?
biggest challenge is being on the East Coast is trying to watch a basketball game.
Bingo.
It's like the game that I want to watch comes on at 10:30, comes off at 12:30, and then practice I got to be up at 6:45 or whatever it is. That's been the hardest part. Luckily, Lakers not playing, so I'm cool. But I want to watch Kyrie play. But hopefully they change that just for Bobby, I guess.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Bobby.
Appreciate that.
It's like it's too damn late.
I'm just saying, 10:30 is not a good time to start a game.
Change it for Bobby. The rest of us benefit. Who do we need to talk to make Bobby Wagner happy? Because this is now important to me. Even Central Time, man. Have you ever lived outside of Eastern Standard Time? You haven't,
I've never
right?
lived, but I've been in places for like extended periods of time, like
yeah,
2-3
like
weeks.
I lived in Central Time for a while. I was in Dallas. I went to college in Tennessee for 2 years. Even that's way better. Just like, okay, it ends at midnight, not 1 a.m. I used to be able to watch inside the NBA because it was on at a reasonable time. Nevertheless, if you ever get time in the mountain or actually the mountain's kind of the best time zone, low key, but West Coast time, fantastic. You could watch Sunday Night Football, then go to dinner. It's the best. Meanwhile, ongoing coverage of Doggo Pitchside Pups 2024. Yesterday, I got the chance to chat with U.S. Women's National Team and Washington Spirit defender Casey Kruger, and with Pitchside Pups coming up Friday night at Audi Field with the Spirit. I, of course, asked Casey about her dog and learned that her dog is named Freddie, which means her dog is Freddie Kruger. Today, I asked Andy Sullivan another important journalistic question. Of course, Andy, one of the captains of the Spirit, another very important journalistic question about Friday's Pitchside Pups. If a dog were to run on the field, who is either between you or your teammates going to be the most excited about that?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh man, I mean, I want to put myself up in the top.
I feel like you definitely are at least in the top 3.
Yeah, but I also feel like around game time, like how intense I get, so I can also
That's also true.
In the
That's
zone.
also true.
Wow. I'm running through kind of the game. The first person that pops into my mind is McKenna Morris, one of our rookies, who loves her dog, her family's dog, Smokey, so much that she recently got her own dog. But also, like, she's so loyal to her dogs that it could be like she only has eyes for her dogs, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a tricky one. I mean, I know like Savannah's got a dog. I know obviously Casey. Everyone loves dogs. So you guys just have such a good group. Yeah, Croy, Hal.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of options.
A lot of options. People would be,
not to mention, I'm sure Seattle's got players that also would be very excited.
True. Oh, Sophia Huerta does some help with a dog rescue, so she would probably be super excited.
Okay, so we'll nominate Sophia. Sophia would be the player on the pitch most excited. Okay, congratulations, Sophia. I don't know if that does anything for you, but also Spirit fans, try to distract Sophia Huerta with your dogs on Friday night because she's a very good player, and you take whatever advantages you can get. Anthony, that's pretty much why I went to journalism school.
That was really good.
I ask the important and difficult questions, and I get answers. The answer is Sophia Huerta, and we can use that answer for good.
Yep.
If you want the full interview with Andy, it's up now. Hoffman W Sports on YouTube, all the women's sports content that we create here all in one place. We'll see you tomorrow here on the team at 980.